Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Harmony Insights lunch date. My name is Erich Kurschat. I am the owner of Harmony Insights LLC, a company that allows me to work with organizations and consultants leveraging the DISC personality assessment with their employees and their clients. Much of which, as you can imagine, is done online these days, from the assessment itself all the way through to the workshop, bringing people together to talk about how they connect with each other and their respective audiences in the workplace. You can find out more about that at harmonyinsights.com. I'm also the founder of the HR Hot Seat Inclusive Mastermind community, which is a licensed group, 10 licensed chapters around the country of over 2,600 members, entirely free, entirely virtual these days. We come together to lift one another up, offer support, accountability, really get to know one another as practitioners, and give people a space to come together in a safe, confidential, non-commercial environment to solve common challenges. And you are all welcome to check out what we do at hrhotseat.com. I started these lunch dates a few months ago, I think early April now, as a way to stay inspired myself and do my best work, inspired by people who I know are there to sort of lift me up and remind me that the work that I'm doing is worth doing and valuable. I think a good reminder for all of us at times. And our guest today, Brendan Nicholls, certainly makes that short list. So Brendan, welcome to today's Harmony Insights lunch date.
It's a pleasure to be here, Eric. Thanks for inviting me. And my only regret is putting this off for so long. So today's the day.
You know what? I say this about HR Hot Seat too, that people find us in their own time. What's most important is that you're here today. And we've had a number of people join us. I mean, you're a pretty popular guy. I've had a whole bunch of people just today on social media say we're so excited to hear from Brendan. So I'm glad that you could spend some time with us.
Wonderful. And hopefully the audience will get something from today's lunch date.
I'm sure they will. Brendan, people know that I choose my guests and my guests choose our topics. And I came to you and said, I am so excited to talk with you, given your role as president of HRA of Greater Oak Brook and services you provide through Paycor, and you're the director of communications for Illinois SHRM State Council. Your LinkedIn page goes on and on. And I said, what would you like to talk about today? And you've titled our conversation, How to Create a Growth Mindset. Given everything that you're doing these days, why is this a topic that you are passionate about?
Well, Eric, thanks for the intro. I think for me personally, having a growth mindset is really, when I think back in terms of my life and some of my decisions, it could have taken a very different turn. I've had to smash down my belief systems intentionally and make myself uncomfortable almost every day so that I can change as a person, so that I can contribute more to the world and just, go on that track. But, from growth, comes stress, and from stress comes growth. So it's a topic near and dear. And, I think when we're coming out of this, we're still in the COVID environment, and as we, start to kind of push through, this is something that I think everybody is dealing with right now. So that's why I thought it was important.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. People are going to get a lot of. We get a lot of HR professionals who join us, but there are leaders at all levels of their company. There are folks in job transition. I think this is something that's going to benefit everybody. First and foremost, I got to say, I speak with a lot of people, and I appreciate a lot of virtual backgrounds. And my hunch is that fantastic background behind you is real and isn't virtual.
It is 100% real, Eric. If I can prove that right there, I actually built that bookshelf. So I know we didn't talk about this previously, but I am not a handy person. I don't claim to be, but if you Google IKEA Billy bookshelf hack, I did that. And because that went so well, I am not doing anything handy around the house ever again.
Well, that's fantastic. And any conversation you have, that has to be featured because you're so proud of it, right?
Absolutely.
Well, Brendan,
fill it up with more books. That's all I have.
Yeah, why not? I've put together a quick poll for people if they would like to participate. By the way, Sally chimes in. That's amazing. So you're getting props in our chat area there. I put together a quick poll that I'm going to launch right now, if people can see it, that asks two pretty simple questions. One, have you read Mindset by Carol Dweck. That's one of the first books that comes up when we start talking about growth versus fixed mindset. And then two, we get vulnerable in these conversations on these lunch dates. And so I ask, with what symptoms of a fixed mindset have you personally struggled in the past? And you can choose all that apply. And you see some things listed there: avoiding challenges, giving up easily, threatened by the success of others, closed off to feedback, belief that abilities can't be developed. And would love, this is all anonymous, or should be, so I would love people's feedback on those. Right off the bat, Brendan, given the work that you do, and it could be really with any of your many roles, what are some of the primary challenges that either you have faced yourself or that you see others face when it comes to, we'll say, graduating from, evolving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? And actually, if you want, how do you even define those to begin with? Let's sort of lay the groundwork of what these terms are that we're discussing today.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to start too. When you think about a fixed mindset, it's really static, right? So it's these fixed beliefs that people have, and a lot of times that prevents them from exploring their potential and maximizing what they can do, right? So it's things that you just literally put into that poll. You're avoiding challenges, you're giving up too easily, you're not putting in the effort, or you're seeing it as, hey, this isn't going to make a difference. Feedback is huge, right? So are you open to criticism? And we live in a world where we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. So feeling threatened by the success of others, those are all things that go into a fixed mindset. None of those things, I think, all of us know that they don't move us towards a goal. They actually move us in the opposite direction. So, the growth mindset is basically saying, you know what, I'm empowered to change this. I'm not held prisoner by these fixed beliefs. And there's more in my control than I think that there is. And whether that's through embracing challenges, persisting, right, making that effort, seeing that effort as, what, this is practice, right? So reframing that lens. And I think when you think about really regrets versus lessons, that's a big thing. And a lot of the mindset piece, Eric, between fixed and growth is, how are you viewing the world right now? I think when we start to think about, how do we kind of get to a place where we can move towards a growth mindset, it's around accepting currently where we're at, and you have to leave the past behind to do that. That power is not available for people that live in the past. And normally how we process things, it's going to fall into one of two categories. And I mentioned regrets. That's a negative experience, and you're basically saying that there's no value there. Most people that live in this space, they're going to make excuses. They have a negative lens. They're living in the past. They're in that rear view mirror, right? But then there's a reason why the windshield is so much larger, right? Because that's where you should be facing forward. And if regret's one approach, what's the other approach? Well, the other approach is to actually look at things in a positive way, like they're lessons that you can learn from. And if you can look back and ask yourself things like, how would I have done that differently? This is your education on how we can make better decisions right now. And you'll also notice that people that tend to, use these lessons tend to improve their results in life. So, those are some of the things we can start to talk about around the differences between a growth or a fixed mindset and versus a growth mindset, and how you can start to shape your world to live more in the growth zone.
And clearly this is a topic that doesn't just resonate with those of us living around the Chicago area. We have someone here from Finland. We have someone from Denver, Colorado. People are chiming in, and thank you for letting us know where you're here from. There's so much already in what you've set up that I think is worth discussing. A couple of things that come to mind for me specifically. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's always some version of this question. What advice would you give your younger self? Which I think is a solid question. The one that intrigues me a little bit more is, what would you do differently? And almost to a person, the common response that I hear is, from those who I'd imagine adopt that growth mindset that you're talking about is, I don't know that I would do anything differently. Every stumbling block, every obstacle that I faced along the way has got me to where I am. Some of it I would have preferred not to experience, but to say that I regret anything is to say that I regret then what has made me who I am. Um, have you heard that question being asked or had to respond to it yourself over time?
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. Um, Absolutely, 100%.
And when, as you're working with, and I know you spend a lot of time with HR professionals through HRA of Greater Oak Brook and in other places, how do you see some of these challenges being played out specifically in the HR space among folks who are in job transition, perhaps among folks who are yearning for
Mhm.
a leadership role to be taken seriously in strategic conversations, to have a quote unquote seat at the table? How have you seen this play out among HR professionals specifically?
In a few ways, I think one of the big ones, when back when we were meeting in person, right, face to face, we would have our monthly meetings, and I would meet people that sometimes I had not seen in years, and I'd say, hey, what brings you to an HRA meeting? Great to see you. And they would say, I just lost my job, and I'm like, I'm sorry, how can I help?
Mhm.
And the challenge for them, and I think a question that we all need to ask ourselves is, what future regrets do we want to choose, right? And I see the look on their face when I just say, look, um, great to see you again, but I don't know anything you've been up to. Nobody here knows you. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is the plant, right now. So even though you haven't been continuing to keep up with your network, and that is so critical. And Eric, you facilitate this better than anyone I've ever seen, right? I mean, you're responsible for helping people build their networks. I mean, let's just not make two bones about it. But with HR people, a lot of times, they don't want to make that extra investment, right? And again, whether it's they're just saying I'm not a good networker, or hey, I have a job, or whatever the case could be. I mean, that's certainly a big one. Another one is just these self-limiting beliefs of, what, I'm just a HR coordinator, or I'm just a recruiter, right? And I'll see people that, they'll have a higher level HR position open up above them at that same company. I'll say, why don't you go for it? No, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. And as soon as that comes out of their mouth, I know that they couldn't do that, right? And some of this, I think, is really goes down to letting go of who you are, right? A lot of times, Eric, and I don't know if this is specific to HR, but we're in what's called, I heard this concept one time of the drift. And when you think about the drift, you think about something just kind of floating along, right, in the water, like a piece of driftwood. It's going where the current's going to take it. And a lot of us are in the drift. And we're in the drift because our parents were in the drift, and their parents were in the drift. So a lot of us aren't even conscious that we're just going through the motions in life, instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to be intentional about what I want and who I want to be, and really creating that identity before it's too late. So it's when somebody says, I'm a procrastinator, right? I mean, they're basically saying, hey, here's how I identify with myself. And with HR, it's very simple that how you talk to yourself is so important, and you can change that. And the truth is, your identity is malleable, right? It's like a piece of metal. You can bend it, you can shape it into different things. You have the power to change what you believe you are. And if you want to be something else, you can do that too. So I mean, literally, if you wanted to be one thing today, you can, and you could be something totally different tomorrow. But you have to let go of who you are right now, and then really find a model of what you aspire to be. So there's a little difference here in between comparing yourself and actually, because that's negative, right? That's comparing success, and I've done that, and it's led to anxiety and just not a lot of good things. But if I can find a model that I aspire to be like, then I can start to kind of make a list of those behaviors and beliefs and make sure that, okay, is what I'm doing aligned with who I want to be? And honestly, I think it's the discomfort piece that is the reason a lot of people don't do the hard work. Um, that and also too internally, but also when you're starting to explain to people why you're doing different things, like that's uncomfortable too. So it's a little bit of that, right? I mean, like a lot of people know if I'll be drinking bulletproof coffee with butter in it, so I'm keto, right? So that can be kind of an identity. Um, so a couple things there, and I'll stop for a second.
Well, you're resonating. The things that you're saying are resonating with our attendees. Jane, who works with HR professionals in an academic setting, students who are becoming HR professionals, is saying that she's gonna steal that drift concept to use with her students. If people haven't heard of that, I would recommend Googling it to see what comes up. I want to get to social media. I want to touch on that just for a moment because I think that there's something about that that plays in, and I say it now because I feel like I'm going to forget. And so you have to remind me that that's where I said we were going to go next. I want to share our results first of the poll. We have 29% of our attendees today say that they have read Mindset by Carol Dweck. 71% haven't. So in terms of first steps from this conversation, those of you who have not read the book, that might be a good start because Carol goes quite a bit into this. And thank you for your vulnerability around that second question. You can see how that shakes out. I won't go into all of it, but it sounds like 48% is the highest percentage of people that have experienced or struggled with avoiding challenges altogether, perhaps out of fear of failure. I deal a lot with disc styles and personality styles and perfectionist tendencies, struggle with perfectionist tendencies myself, and fear of failure. And for me, fear of error is a big thing. It's a driving force that certainly has kept me from tackling some challenges that I could have very well excelled at. We see a couple of higher percentages too around threatened by the success of others and this belief that abilities can't be developed. Let's come back to that threatened by others. First of all, is there anything that you see here, Brendan, that surprises you anyway, or that you wanted to make note of in terms of these percentages?
I mean, that big one, right? Avoiding challenges. We're all creatures of habit, and we seek comfort. And even for myself, right? Some people, I've been accused of being a cyborg at times, just getting up at 4 a.m. and I mean, just attacking the day, setting goals. Uh, you know, uh, Crushing them the best I can. I certainly, and a lot of this building myself up is just because I get, literally, I get a lot of rejection, right? And a lot of this is it's a muscle. Your mind is a muscle, just like your body. And if, the more challenges that you run into and can practice overcoming, or at least putting that effort in, I'll say effort is more important than overcoming. Because if you can, it's like water in a dam. That water is pressing against that dam, and if there's a little crack over time, it's going to break. But if nothing's pushing, nothing's going to happen. So I think avoiding challenges is big. And then um, it looks like belief that abilities can't be developed and threatened by other success are just both in line there. And I think those can be hand in hand, right? You think of someone like Erich. I mean, it's like, man, I could never do all this stuff. Like HR hot seat, lunch dates. I mean, how could I even start to create my own type of community like that? Um, you'll counter that with saying, actually, no, I'm an introvert. Here's how I did it.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody knows that story.
Yeah.
So a couple thoughts there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And likewise, I look at your LinkedIn profile and I think you're just involved with so much. It's always that comparison to what other people are doing. And so I want to just pause briefly on that threatened by others' success and come back to this issue of social media. I think that is how can we not compare ourselves to others? You see the best of people and maybe a best that doesn't actually exist in their lives on Facebook. Every time that you log in, I think there's some of that on LinkedIn, and I'm less familiar with some of the other platforms out there, but anytime I think you're looking to find your voice and articulate that. You go to those platforms where you would be articulating that voice, and you see what other people are saying, and you can't help but say, "Oh my goodness, like I'm not sure I'm doing that, number one, or two, capable of doing that." Instead of asking, is this right for me? Is this something that I would benefit from doing to begin with? Just because Brendan is, kicking butt and taking names over here, does that necessarily mean that it's something that I should also be doing myself, or is he sort of living his own path and his own journey?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, just like trying anything new, Eric, I think people have to see value in it and get bought into, okay, what is this, right? If you're putting cat videos up, right? I mean, there's a place for that. It's not LinkedIn, right? If you want to engage professionally and share information, I mean, that is free for everybody. And you can Google an article on how to do these things. I think at the end of the day, though, we forget that we're human beings, and just like going up to somebody at a party, like you don't. Oh, I don't know why people change so much. Like you have to break the ice. People have to know you, then they have to like you, and then they have to trust you, right? But if you're trying to build your brand over social media, you can't shortcut relationships, especially digitally. And people get known, right? I mean, anybody that follows you, Eric, I mean, immediately you put something out, you have engagement. So I know those people are strong in social media because they're already taking the time to have a conversation, right? Be creative, be original if you can. I curate a lot of information out, and I see that as, so it just kind of depends what do you want to be, and then just start incrementally, putting a few actions in place to do it. I mean, Eric, like I look at you, I mean, you're off the wall with all that stuff. So, I'm looking at you like the model I want to be. But
I appreciate that. And of course, I've had my own journey to kind of get here, and there's stuff that I'm still learning and fumbling with along the way. And I could tell you some stories of failure that, might or might not surprise you, but the goal is to see those as learning lessons, as you mentioned earlier. So I appreciate those comments.
yep.
Um, I I want to say when I first stumbled upon a lot of this distinguishing between fixed and growth mindset is when I was starting Harmony Insights and listening to a lot of podcasts, as I referenced earlier. And I started hearing about it in terms of abundance versus scarcity mentality. The scarcity saying, well, there's only so much pie to go around. And if you've taken this slice, it's not there for me. There are already a number of disc facilitators. Who am I to throw my name? There are already a number of, HR practitioners out there that are probably more well suited for this leadership role. Why would I throw my name in the hat, and instead of that scarcity mentality, the abundance mentality, that there is enough to go around and there are opportunities for everyone, should we believe in ourselves enough to go after them. But it's clearly harder than just, like you've said a couple of times, who are you today, who you want to be tomorrow, and you can get there. And I think we all believe it or want to believe that. But it's more easily said than done. So in the time that we have left, which unfortunately is only a few minutes, what are some of your top tips or resources that you could share for those of us who believe what you're saying, want to believe what you're saying, really want to move along the spectrum, and it is a spectrum of fixed mindset to growth mindset? What is a actionable tip that you can share to allow us to move in that direction immediately following this conversation?
Yeah, a couple things, Eric. I think the first one is, what questions are you asking yourself to develop a growth mindset? I host a weekly HR virtual support group call, 8 a.m. on Fridays, and we actually started talking about this. And a question I posted to a group was, how are you challenging yourself today, right? And I think that we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to challenge yourself today? What are we doing to think hard today, right? What can I learn from something that is I would normally perceive as negative, right? What's the lesson here? What strategy am I going to try next? So I think it's that concept of iteration that people just need to keep in front of them and constantly trying to solve a problem, right? So how do you, but within our lives, it's all about breaking through who you are today to become that next person. And we all talk about goals, right? And there's a lot of truth in saying, set goals so big that they scare you. And a couple things here, tactical things. Because on my mirror, my bathroom mirror, I have my goals on my sticky notes, and I write them down like I've already accomplished them. And then when I accomplish them, I move them from the right side over to the left side. So I know at least I'm looking at them twice a day. And then when I see it, if I accomplish one, it's like, okay, cool. But then this side, I still have things to work on. I've broadened that up quite a bit over the last few years, because now I'm thinking big long term. And as I am expecting, right, to be a father here towards the end of the year, that's more just change and growth I'm looking forward to. So with goals, we typically just either pick something physical or we pick something career and financial. But I want to challenge everyone to also make some categories that you could put 3 goals around, like mental, also spiritual, right? Whatever that means to you. Relational, relationships, so critical right now. Um, Community, right? Giving back to the community, whatever that means for you. Recreation. Don't forget that you need to do something outside of work. This is something I've struggled with, and this is where I found my passion for, weight training and just that is my outlet, amidst some other things. And then what are your passion projects you want to do? You know, there's power in writing all this down and then looking at it every day and then knowing the actions that you can do to get there, because there's power in that adherence. You can't hide from yourself, right? But keep some sort of a scorecard so you know how you're doing.
I love that, having those measurable goals and then keeping track of them, measuring them as you go. I picture you
Yeah.
with this mirror that's like so full of post-its that like half of your face isn't groomed quite like the other half because you have so many post-its in the way that you can't see that half in the mirror. Who knows? Who knows? But I appreciate that. And I especially appreciate, when I've done some career coaching and talking with people about who they are professionally, and so many people put all of their eggs in the profession basket. And I love that you highlighted that there are so many different ways that we can invest in ourselves, so many different buckets, spiritually, financially, relationally. Yes, professionally, we want to be fulfilled and rewarded. And I will talk to the cows come home about how important that is. But the fact that you mentioned some of these other buckets and encourage people to tend to those along the way, so they filled up in so many different ways and they can draw energy from one when they're lacking energy in another, I think is so beneficial. Brendan, this has been a fantastic conversation. We're already at 12:30. People are showing interest in this group that you've mentioned on Friday. So we're going to follow up in an email to attendees with some additional information so that they can find you in various places, including perhaps if you're open to inviting people into that group. Where's the best place online for people to connect with you following this conversation?
Just type in Brendan Nicholls, 2 L's, into LinkedIn. You'll see my profile. Erich and I share, Erich, we share 866 connections.
Are you kidding me?
Like it's unbelievable, right? But I spent a lot of time there. That's where I'm glad to help make introductions, talk more about this. One thing I just want to leave everybody with, if I have it here, is my journal. And I'll show you what I have written here. I asked myself 3 questions: Did I live? Did I love? And did I matter today? Right. That helps keep me focused. But as we talk about growth mindset, I want to remind everyone that if you can use these different buckets and categories to try and be more, like if you can be more, then you can do more. And then when you do more, you can have more. And when you have more, you can contribute more. And I think that's where we all want to be. So
I love that. What better way to leave it than did I live, did I love, and did I matter? That is fantastic. That is worth the price of admission right there. Brendan, this has been a fantastic conversation. If everybody else enjoyed it as much as I did, I hope you'll return to harmonyinsights.com/lunch dates. We have a few coming up that I'm really excited about going into September and even October. Thursday of next week, I'm going to be talking about adaptability in talent development with Dr. Esther Jackson of ATD. That'll be a great conversation. Just recently added to the calendar, somebody who's actually joining us today, if she's still here, on October 15th, the Power of Human Resources Community with Courtney Templin, who is the president of JB training solutions, as well as Chicago SHRM. So I can't wait to talk with Courtney about the power of HR community. And then a really neat one that I just added, October 22nd, with Katie Lopez, the HR anthropologist. How can we look to anthropology to help us understand diversity, equity, and inclusion? That's going to be such an interesting conversation, as well as a couple more in there with some TEDx speakers. So we have quite a calendar, and you can find all of that at harmonyinsights.com/lunch dates. Sharing that URL with the hashtag lunch date is the greatest way for us to be able to spread the word about what we do. So if you've enjoyed this, certainly connect with Brendan, but share that URL, especially on LinkedIn, to spread the word so that we can invite others into our conversation going forward. If you need to leave now and go about your afternoon inspired to do your best work, which is the goal of these lunch dates, you can do so with our blessing. Hopefully you stay safe and healthy and inspired again to do that best work. If you would like to stick around, Brendan has been gracious enough to offer to spend a few additional minutes with us to answer any questions that you might have for him. But in the meantime, Brendan, let me just reiterate how valuable this time has been and how much I appreciate not only your friendship, but certainly having you as a guest today.
Erich, I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody on this call.